Hello, everyone. This is Tatiana Bazzichelli, the director of the Disruption Network Club, and I'm very glad to welcome everyone to our 33rd conference, Hacking Alienation, Migrant Power, Art and Tech. We are here in presence and also live from the Kunstquartier Bethanien, the Studio One. And I feel to thank everyone first from the Disruption Network Club team and also the speakers and the audience that is present in Berlin with us and also the audience that is online. And this is a very important conference for us because we all know that recently there have been also politically, and not only recently, a lot of discussion about migrations. Here, from the perspective of the Disruption Network Club, it's very important to focus on these words through the activity of people that identify as migrants, and they do a very important work. And we want to discuss the discourse of self-determination and also agency, and also go through the realm of art and technology to understand how to also defeat a system of oppression and alienation. And this also goes back to the title of the conference, Hacking Alienation. And as I said, for us it's also very important to connect with the discourse of artistic practices and also media literacy to go concretely into work of people and also try to understand from one side how we could work consciously with technology that sometimes could be a system of oppression and alienation and surveillance, but at the same time could also be used for emancipation to create communities and also to work together for distributed agency. And today our program is a bit longer than normal. We have one keynote and two panels. And I'm very happy then to welcome our keynote speaker. I will also then welcome her more in depth later, Anna Titovets Intektra. She will speak about art and technology, and at the same time also to share survival strategies in relation to community building, reshaping identity, and also imagine how we could create more social rights through digital means and technology. Then we have a panel that will follow immediately after with Alla Pop, Milagros Miseli, Marwa Fatafta, and Walid El Hori. This panel is called Decolonizing AI. And also here it's very important to understand with this buzzword of AI actually what do we mean, not only in terms of imagining and reflecting on power asymmetries that are embedded in the technology of AI, in machine learning, and also algorithms, but at the same time also trying to understand how to understand better how the meaning of AI, the impact of AI, not only in systems of oppression, but also during war. So we will also speak about Gaza and Palestine, and we think it's very important right now to be conscious of the consequence of technology that is produced also especially in the West, but not only in the West, as we will see, because through Milagros Miseli, we will also understand that this technology is often outsourced and is coming through a form of exploitation of other countries. And then the last panel of today with Stella Nianzi, Nima Jadama, and Moro Yaffa, moderated by Mo Er, will reflect on discourse of, from one side, the struggle to equal rights and justice, and from the other also on experience through a direct journey of people that identify as migrants and forms also of agency that could be created through media and artistic practice as well. And finally, with the workshop that we will have on Sunday with Dinara Rasuleva and Alla Pop, we will instead reflect on form of technological futures and also how forms of technology could be rethought through the agency and the work of people that suffer exploitation and colonialism as well. And this workshop is only for Flintham people, and there are still places, so you could register if you want. You can have the information on our website and directly register, but please check the eligible criteria because they are very specific. And also in that sense, we have a workshop that is a bit different from the past. Is a workshop that is longer and is for the whole Sunday. And this is also important because we think that to imagine new codes of the future then also is necessary to give space to community building. Speaking about community building, I also want to mention that we have our audience online that is following through our streaming. The streaming is run by the Bowling Head Media, and we have at the same time also a chat that our audience can use. This chat, you can find it on the page of our conference. For the people that are following on YouTube, you should go there, and you can ask directly the question to our speakers. So through Agnese, we will have then questions coming at the end of the panels. So it's also very important to hear the voice of who is not with us in Berlin today. And then I'm very happy to thank our funders, and since I want to be very specific, now I'll put my glasses. This is important. Also, you know, time is running for me as well. So, thanks to our funders, in particular the Hauptstadt Kulturfonds, that is the capital culture funds of the city of Berlin, the Riva and David Logan Foundation. We are also part of the New Perspective for Action, that is a project by Reimagine Europe, co-funded by the European Union. We also work in collaboration with Untold Stories and Rogue Agency that are here today with us, and probably you noticed there are 2 tables there. And these tables have a really nice material from them. Also, Untold Stories creates specifically a publication also about AI for this conference, critical AI, I would say. So you can also approach them during the break and get the publication that they have that are really well done. So I feel to say, thanks for being here. And also thanks to both Untold Stories and Rogue Agency, because we discuss a lot together with them, also in shaping these panels today. So I really feel that is important to thank them specifically because we value the community sharing that we create among us, and in this time that we know is becoming more and more difficult, we feel more and more oppressed, all of us. I think that to benefit of this sharing is really valuable, so thank you. And so we have also our partner venues, the Kunst am Kreuzberg Bethanien, and GBK. And GBK is where we normally do our community program. And our media partners, TADS, Global Voices, Untold Magazine, and Il Mitte. And our streaming partner, Boiling Head Media, that I already mentioned. At the same time, I remind everyone, both people online that here, that we also have members at the Disruption Lab, and we accept donations. So if you want to become a member, It's very easy. You can just register and get your wonderful card of the Disruption Lab, and the membership costs €50 for the whole year, so it's a pretty good deal. You can enter in all the events for free after you pay, of course, €50. And so, yeah, very strange concept of free. Okay, now after all this introduction, I'm very happy to introduce our keynotes under the title of My Name is Subject to Immigration Control. So I welcome here on stage with me Anna Titovets Intektra.
Thank you, Tatiana, and hi everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you today at this conference.
Thank you, and I have a longer introduction for you, then I leave the stage for you to do your presentation. And it's very important also from our perspective of the Disruption Lab to mention that, of course, there was a lot of discussion of why having a keynote that is coming from Russia. And I would say, first of all, the keynote is because it's a person that is pretty awesome, that is Anna, and also you will see the things that she does. She's really great in her experience with art and technology. But also, I mean, we know, especially in Germany, not only in the past months, after the invasion of Ukraine, a lot of Russian people are not being allowed or invited in cultural events. And I also, as a director of this organization, believe that this is not right, because especially people that experience war and oppression from within should be able to speak, especially the ones as you that left Russia for a reason. And so I think that we really want to praise the fact, as we do a lot here at the Disruption Lab, that an experience from within that is critical of repression has to be heard. And so this is also why we can imagine cultural transformation, and especially if we speak about cultural transformation. So also thank you for being here, because I know it's not easy for you as well. And so speaking about Anna, she's an interdisciplinary artist, curator, and researcher at the intersection of art, technology, and society, with a special focus on digital culture, media, activism, and techno-anthropology. Anna was the concept curator and chief curator of the Cryptography Museum in Moscow, a co-founder of Plum Fest, that is a festival on digital art and audiovisual experimentation. She has been involved in the curation and program direction of many festivals, including the Ars Electronica Festival in Linz and the Polytechnic Museum's Festival of Science, Art, and Technology. And this talk is based on a personal experience of immigration, and also on her observation and research as part of the project Pause Play Culture Under Pressure, with artists and cultural practitioners that have been relocating due war and conflict. And if people are part of our community, you might also remember that she was with us last April in our community event at NGBK that was indeed conceptualized and organized together with the Pause and Play Culture Under Pressure project. So now I leave to you the stage, and thank you very much. I will come back for the moderation.
Thank you so much, Tatiana, and thank you for such a comprehensive introduction of me. And thank you for coming to this conference. Okay, then I will proceed. So, the topic I decided, the title of my talk, which I decided to choose, is Subject to Immigration Control. And within this talk, I will try to touch some of the most important things and issues which are connected to the topic of migration and immigration. And indeed, as Tatiana has mentioned, migration, since ages, people migrate for many reasons. And if you think about it, in the beginning, of course, people were migrating for better forests, better animals to hunt, but then disasters, wars, discrimination came into play. Of course, with the time, and especially the recent years, the topic of migration and immigration, and I will come to these terminological issues a bit later, became really very important issue. So I decided to go to the politica.Europe to check how it is being made in the media with the headlines. And of course, what you can see, this is only the 2024 year, and the records which I got, it's more than 200 records in this media. And of course, one of the most often words which you can see here is tough, crisis, problem, etc. Which means that this topic is really, really important now. So coming back to the terminology, in truth, I realized that I devoted quite some slides for the terminology, because in truth, I think that talking about alienation and talking about, the obstacles and different types of difficulties which migrants are facing in the world, actually, it's quite important, how they're being labeled. And in truth, there is no definition of migrant or of immigrant in law. So basically, and actually when we started the conversation with Tatiana, we were speaking, so what should be the word which we should use in the conference, and what should be this label and title which I should use. And actually in the conference, we decided that we use the word migrant, and it's an umbrella term which is not very precise and which just means that the key thing which we mean here is that a person has left her or his or they home for a certain reason, and currently is not at his home country. But actually, if you think about it, and I put here an image of people, labeling the data sets for AI, because I thought that as well as, the legal system is labeling people with a certain type, like migrant, refugee, immigrant, displaced person, asylum seeker, which means a certain way how this person, what kind of rights this person have, and how it's being perceived by society. And this labeling really influences not only the bureaucratic things, not only the way of freedom, how the person can move, what kind of rights he or she has, but a lot of other things. And actually, there was quite a big discussion that the term migrant is not correct to use, because it puts away those people who are in a more despair and who needs more protection from the state. So then I would like to show you, I wanted to check, how actually Midjourney is what kind of images Midjourney is giving us for different types of these labels, because I believe that what we have from the Midjourney when we prompt with a very simple, plain prompt, just giving it a word, then we can get back what society thinks about that or another person. I will not comment a lot about these pictures which you see here, so I decided to put the prompts with the terms refugee, asylum seeker, and etc. And the system gave me certain pictures, which you can see that this is how actually, this is the generalized image of every type of the migrant which we can see. It's very interesting, actually. As you see, I did it 3 times so that to be sure that it's really like an emblematic thing which we have from Midjourney, from its data sets, how it sees these kind of people. So displaced person is mainly a woman and people of color, and you see these, national dresses. Asylum seeker, you see that at every set there are, and we know why, there are these fences in front of the in front of the faces. Refugee, as you can see, it's quite often depicted with the small children, and again we have a lot of ethnical clauses and etc. When it comes to immigrant, and I think it reflects the idea that immigration goes back also in the immigration for AI, starting in the beginning of 20th century. So you can see that pictures here are black and white, which means a bit more historical way of thinking what is immigrant. Of course, the discussion recently about what we get from AI, of course, it's the discussion about the biased database, the biased images which we have. But these biases, they come from us, from the society, is how we depict and how we comprehend and perceive people, how we have these generalized images of the migration. So reflecting a bit more about this, I would like to mention this Buolamwini initiative. Buolamwini is a poet and researcher, AI researcher and coder, who has initiated this this website and research about algorithmic discrimination. So if you have seen in the previous images that there is a discrimination or some bias, you can actually report at her algorithmic justice league, which she has established for fighting the injustice which we face in AI bias systems. So coming back to terminology, I was actually curious when I was thinking about how do I determine myself? I normally call myself immigrant, and actually I had to flee Russia for certain reasons of political pressure and the situation which we know is happening in Russia because of the war and censorship. And I asked some of my colleagues who has to leave Russia too, and they also said that we feel ourselves as immigrants. Why immigrants? Immigrants mainly, I would say that the word immigrant means that the person has left the country not because of seeking for a better life, but because the person had to leave the country for a certain reason, because it became dangerous or for that or another reason. But keep on a bit more with the topic of labeling. There is also a project by Tetsuya Miyazaki, who is an artist and a migrant or immigrant. I don't know how he talks about himself. So actually what he found out is that generally speaking, there is a positive feeling in the society towards expat and a very negative feeling towards migrants. And he decided to make a project actually making 20 photos of people who are either migrants or expats, and he put the photos online and asked people, so based on the visual information which you have, how would you define this person? Because obviously normally expats are very welcomed, they don't being asked to learn the language, to integrate, and etc., while migrants are being negatively perceived because commonly in the society it's believed that the migrants, they are taking something from the economy. They are actually bringing crime and some other bad stuff. So this the project which is problematizing also not only those official labeling, but also including this label of expats. So coming back to the labeling, when you are labeling people, it's not only about bureaucracy, but it's also about how people around you perceive you and how you feel yourself in the new home. And every migrant or every migrant, and I will use this word migrant as an umbrella term, I will repeat it again, have their own story. And of course, we cannot generalize cannot really say that everyone is being discriminalized or having struggles the same as the other one. Every migrant has their own story, and of course, depending on the race, depending on the gender, depending from which country the person is coming, and the income and the other conditions, these struggles are different. But what is common is that every migrant has a story, what was before and what is this person experiencing during the immigration and after being a migrant. And I would like to show you an artwork. This artwork, it was a kind of a pre-starting point for me to become an immigrant. As you can see, it's 2012, and this was the year where a lot of protests were happening in Russia and also worldwide. The act of self-immolation became the act of, the form of extreme protest, and it's one of the most painful acts of despair. So here, the idea was to show people that this act of self-immolation, of the extreme form of protest, actually in the current society, in the modern society, because of the digitalizations and because of the fakes and deep fakes which we face, it became quite problematic for people to really feel what is real and what is not while scrolling the news and seeing these kind of protests, which are also happening among the migrants quite sometimes. This is another artwork which I wanted to share with you. This artwork is a small commentary which I made right before making a final decision that I need to leave Russia. There was a time when the pervasive censorship and acts of reports from people to other people, it became like ubiquitous, it became everywhere, and it was really, really difficult to do anything, to comment, to speak, to post anything about what's going on in Russia, and to be critical and to share their opinion, because I was always involved into the activities, putting the critical view on what's happening. So this small commentary is actually showing, and you can go online to this website and try it by yourself. This is how I felt that, what's on your mind. This is the sentence which you have on Facebook when you start to post. And then I caught myself that actually keeping in mind the cases when people were in prison just because posting, their pictures where they're dressed in coats with the color of yellow and blue, which is the color of Ukraine flag, and they got detained for this. So every word which you are posting, even if it's the word freedom, peace, it can lead you to the prison in Russia. So basically, this is what I'm reflecting here, that before doing anything, before really, posting anything, you have to think twice, and actually that they are really watching and following everything what you are doing. I mean, they police. Yeah, so coming back to the migration, so that was like the last thing which I reflected before really making the decision to become an immigrant. And when we are talking about migration nowadays, modern immigration involves not only physical change of geography, but also relocation to a new digital environment. And of course, we are all talking about digital globalization, but each country, each city has its local characteristic to the digital fabric of the society. And now I'm not only talking about the moment when you are entering a new country with this new digital fabric, but I'm also, of course, talking about migrating of data. When person is becoming a migrant, of course, the personal data is migrating with this person. And actually, migrants are super vulnerable to the fact that they need to give a lot of personal information, like everything, not only the facts, but also the biological data, also biometrical data. And you cannot say no. You cannot say, I want to protect my rights. You cannot say, I don't want to share it with you, because if you say so, you don't get the documents, you don't get the right to be in the country. So this is a really big problem, of course, and I came around this interesting map. This map was created by Migration Plus Tech Monitor. It's a community of journalists, filmmakers, and academics. And what they did is that they are constantly analyzing how migrants are being checked in different countries with modern technologies. So here I made a screencast, and you can see that quite a lot of states, they are integrating modern technologies on the borders, and actually this is one of the biggest issues of today, that migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, they become like people at whom those technologies are being tested, and they don't have the right to say no, because then they will be denied to enter the country. So, of course, one of the technologies which is being used widely recently is face recognition. And I would like to, of course, there are a lot of artists who are reflecting this issue of using face recognition monitoring and AI in face recognition. There is Trevor Paglen, forensic architecture, Julian Oliver, Dana Vasiliev, James Bridle. A lot of people, a lot of artists are reflecting it. But what I was curious and why I have chosen this concrete artwork to share with you, it's an artwork by Paolo Cirio, because this artwork really became quite, it really gained quite an effect, a real effect on the society, and it got a lot of commentary also from the authorities. So what's happening there, what's happening here is that Paolo Cirio collected 1,000 public images of police in photos taken during the protests in France, and then he processed them with facial recognition software. And then he created an online platform with a database of the resulting images. It's 4,000 faces of police officers to crowdsource the identification by name. As you can see, it's quite problematic and ambiguous, because of course, what he's doing is exposing policemen to the people the way which is, in a gray area. Is it really right to do this? And then what he did also, as you can see, he put his faces all over the city. That artwork was censored, of course, and of course, it's quite problematic. And the artist says that, look, what I'm doing here is I'm not really doing any illegal stuff, but I'm putting a spotlight into the possible ways how this system of AI and face recognition can be used, and that it should be banned the way how it's being used, because the power play is very asymmetrical. So he decided to put this power play on the other side as if there was police using it. And he initiated this petition to ban facial recognition in Europe. Well, it's still on. You can go there and vote for banning it, but of course it's still here all over the place in Europe and in other countries. Then another artwork which I would like to share with you, which deals with the digital tools, and quite a lot of artworks actually, of course, reflecting on the moment when a person is crossing the border, because this is one of the most tough experience everyone has. And here, as you can see, I have chosen to show you a very old one. You can see the years, it's 2007, 2012, and it's Electronic Disturbed Theater. This is the art group, a very well-known art group in media art. So let me show the work quickly.
Curator and Zalura writes, "We have a tradition of migration, a tradition of long walks. Today, we are witnessing la migración de los pueblos mexicanos, the returned odyssey to the historical, mythological asylum." The historical, the mythological asylum? It's difficult to follow the soundings of that song. Today's borders and circuits speak at lower frequencies.
So what's happening here? So basically they created a tool that merged GPS technology with poetry. And as you probably know, one of the most problematic border crossing is the crossing through the deserts of the US and Mexico borderlands. And a lot of people died there within the recent years, and they keep on dying. But that was the year when it was really, the problem was really very intense. So what the artists decided to do is that they created this application which not only helps those who are making the travel through the desert to find the water places where they can find water, but also it's an app which was given, which was transiting the poetry 24 hours following the path of the person. So in this way, the artists were believing that they were creating this sense of safety, because a person who had not only, these messages orienting himself or herself where he or she can find water, but also having this poetry constantly speaking to this person. I think it's a very, not only poetic, but also very human-oriented device and approach and project which was created by artists. And in truth, I think that this kind of an artwork and approach is relevant not only for the people who are crossing the borders, but also for the moment when the people are have already crossed the border and they are migrants in a new country. Well, with this project, it was also quite interesting because the police started initiating an investigation, and basically they shut down this project because they didn't want that this kind of tool should help, illegal immigrants. Of course, that was the interpretation which was being given by police to this. And unfortunately, this project was never really released, because by the time when they really finished, finalized all the things, all the technical stuff with the project, first of all, they were banned, and secondly, the immigrants, they realized that it's actually quite dangerous to use the phones while crossing the borders. But this idea of sending these empathic messages, and not only empathic but useful during the trip, it got a continuation in some real applications. Like, for example, this idea of geofencing, given an information via text messages to refugees and informing them of potential dangers at various points of their journey. This is one of the apps which is being developed recently also by the self-organized group Tech for Good. And they're using this geofencing approach, which means that when one is approaching a certain geographical point, it receives a text message about a potential danger. So, during the process of immigration, of course, there is this turning point when you become a migrant in a new country, and actually you start to begin to live this in-between rootless life when you have the lost past and you are still experiencing this non-integrated present. And there are a lot of artworks which are devoted to this, loss of belongingness, to this loss of roots and feeling of loneliness and being unintegrated and alien and being feeling as an alien in the new country. And here it's just a small commentary, a small artwork I'm sharing with you as just an illustration by Safat Salim, which is an American artist with Muslim descent. And so what I found out, and actually what the research says, is that when you are being an immigrant and you are a stranger in the new country, basically what's happening is that your mobile phone, your smartphone, becomes the center of the universe. By mobile phone, you are getting the information, you are being connected to the community, you are getting to know tricks and hacks of the new system, of the bureaucratic system which you have. And this is, from one side, is good because, you know, as you can see, the research organization RAND, they made a survey, and what they found out is that refugees often prioritize their phone and internet connection above education, clothing, and even healthcare, because this is the way how you feel less alienated, and this is the way how, this is your tool, this is your really tool to, you know, to struggle and to fight for all kind of obstacles and everyday difficulties. But of course, it means that most of the immigrants also using, you know, the technology from the big corporations. And basically Google becomes one of the applications, one of the, you know, Google gives a lot of applications which are being used by many immigrants, which means that, of course, the immigrant or the migrant has a certain way of looking into the world. And reflecting this, that modern migrant heavily relies on Google services, it means that the city perceived via Google Maps, everyday routine and bureaucratic papers are shown through Google Lens, and conversation happen with you know, people in the new country. You are using Google Translator, and then all kind of digital services with the rating system. It becomes really the reality of every immigrant, which is quite interesting, because if you think about it, it also gives you a bit of a distorted view on the world, because you really perceive the world via Google Lens, which is quite interestingly, it gives you almost sometimes Dadaistic translation, and it creates a meta-narrative of the city, which was not probably meant by all those, you know, signs and text information which you meet in the city. And I decided to make a little video artwork. I will show you an extract from it. And in this artwork, I'm showing that looking into the world through Google Lens, it really gives you a certain perspective on the world, and it gives you another dimension of what you see. And also, what is interesting is that immigrants, they pay much more attention to the street culture rather than the local ones. Let me show you a short extract. So basically, as you could see from this extract, it's quite interesting that you are becoming this scrolling human being. From one side, you are scrolling a lot of information which gives you hacks, and from the other side, you are scrolling the news from your home country. And in my case, because it was a very personal artwork, you are scrolling the war, basically. So you, on one side, you have the war, on the other side, you have the Google map, and then you are perceiving the world around you via Google Lens, which quite often gives you the wrong interpretation, the wrong translation of what you see around you. And here, I specifically focused on street culture because it's more alternative. It reflects, the marginalized also society. And coming back to the tools, I call it the digital survival kit, and how the migrants are using and hacking the technology which we already have in our normal everyday life. One of the usage here, it's not very probably bright example which I give, but I came around to some other ones that Google Maps, it gives you the opportunity to create the alternative, the customized maps, and it's being used by migrants too. They really make these customized maps of the cities where they put the certain point which are useful for the everyday living to survive or struggle or to find some important for the everyday life things, and they share these maps within community, which is quite an interesting way of using the Google Maps, and which is quite useful. And actually, as you probably have heard about, actually there are quite a lot of quite a lot of tech companies, and not only tech companies, but organizations, communities, and also artists developing different kind of applications and tools for migrants, helping them to fight with the struggles they have during the everyday life. But what is interesting, again, this research organization which develops solutions to public policy, RAND, they made a survey, and actually what they found out that most of the applications which are being developed recently, they are not being used by migrants. And a lot of them, they have a very bright ideas, very, human-oriented missions to help immigrants, refugees, to be more informed, to fight for their rights, and etc., etc. But the reality is that migrants are not using them. Why? Because they don't have time to explore, they don't have time, to download them, they don't have the capacity, to know whether this application is existing. And actually, for me, coming with the background of cryptography museum and data protection, this brings also another danger, that every app is the endless possibility for digital surveillance, control, and personal data breaches. And I really appreciate a lot of initiatives of the communities which are making a lot of apps for the community building and etc. But the issue of data privacy is normally something which is not really seen very carefully. So the immigrants, they normally tend to use, the normal, everyday messengers, which we use to in our everyday life, but they're using it in a certain way. Of course, there are a lot of groups and channels which they are creating, and they are super useful not only for sharing the hacks, not only for crowdsource information, but also get support and sense of community and solve specific issues. There are a lot of them in Telegram, in WhatsApp, on Facebook, and this is what is being prioritized in almost all of the countries, but most of the population of the migrants. All these WhatsApp group, Telegram, Facebook, etc. It really gives a lot of power of crowdsourced information, and sometimes it's also also crowdfunding campaigns for the community to struggle with some issues in discrimination. Another thing which I would like to briefly touch is that issue, not the issue, but the topic of gig economy and digital labor resistance. It is known that a lot of immigrants, migrants, when they're coming to the country, they are the majority of the workers in gig and the so-called gig economy. Gig economy is all those apps which are like delivery apps or what else? Delivery food apps and Uber and etc. These are the examples of the gig apps. So instead of being paid for the amount of time they work, people are being paid for the certain tasks. And this is the really case of a lot of digital discrimination. And of course, migrants are using a lot of hacks and tricks how to actually misuse the algorithms, how to confuse them. Because, like, for example, typically when a migrant comes to a new country, there is a gap between the person received the right to work and because of the bureaucratic reasons. So there is a certain period of time when a person cannot work. So what is being developed is this digital labor resistance, and migrants normally call it like misbehavior, which they have in digital realm, is that they really cheat the app. Like, for example, they rent, let's say, the account of a more successful person who has a high rating system and who has a proper profile in delivery app, and they just rent it from another person to work instead of this person, for example. Of course, then they are using bots, which are always active on the background, and these bots are helping them to have better shifts and to avoid the algorithmical injustice. And one of the, for example, approaches is that also migrants quite often uses, like Uber workers, for example, they are using WhatsApp groups to coordinate there. And when they believe that they are underpaid, they coordinate themselves, that they log out from the system so that the system thinks that there is no available drivers at the moment. And then the system creates this, the system creates another algorithm approach. If there is no available drivers around, then the prices go up. And then the one who is still logged in tells the other one, okay, now you can log in back. And this is how they also fight, the low rate payings in this kind of gig economy. I will probably skip this one because we don't have enough time. Then one of the other tricks, which I find quite interesting, of course, it's not very widespread in the majority, but still quite some people in the migrant community using this trick. It's using the apps which are not meant to be to function this way. For example, using Tinder or Hinge or other apps to find jobs. And this is a very smart way. If you think about it, if you make your profile in a good way, it's a very good networking. Well, it's not working. It doesn't work out that good all the time, but still, it's quite a way also being used in within migrant communities. And as a final artwork, which I would like to show to you, it's an artwork by Raphael Lozano Hammer, and this artwork is called Border Tuner, what artist has made here is this piece is intended as a, let's say, visible switchboard of communication where people can self-represent. Here he connects two cities in Mexico and USA, Texas and Chihuahua, and he put microphones on both cities, and with these powerful searchlights, like these torches, he calls them bridges of light. When they cross, then people in Mexico and in USA can speak with each other.
Ay, qué padre. ¿En qué año vas? ¿En tercero de primaria?
En cuarto.
Cuarto. ¿Y qué tal? ¿Te gusta la escuela?
Sí.
Muy bien, ¿y te está gustando este juego de las luces?
Sí,
¿Tienes más hermanos?
tengo dos hermanos, uno de 4 años, de 5 y uno de 18.
Ah, pues eres la de medio.
Sí.
Te consienten.
So yeah, these artworks aims to create these connections between the communities on both sides of the border, and to create this, sense of belonging and to fight this alienation between people. I find this artwork very poetic, and indeed, keeping in mind the huge scale of the these lightings which the artist is using, connecting two cities, and it's visible to everyone. And then it comes to a very intimate conversation where immigrants are sharing their memories of what they miss in their new state of being a migrant. Bringing my talk to the final words, I would like to say that, of course, every story of a migrant is different. And of course, unfortunately, the poor people with another color than white of the skin, they are always much more exposed to all kind of discrimination, and they are always much more vulnerable than the other ones. We have to keep in mind that probably what is important is not only the digital tools which we are trying, to implement and to think about, but what is important is to try to change something in us in order to create, to at least try to create, a better world where we are not fighting with each other, but we are empowering each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I really enjoy this keynote also because, and this is also something we discussed together, it's not so easy to find such a narration of artworks with technology in relation to migrations. And this is also interesting perhaps to reflect why there is not so much research on art and tech and migration. And there are a lot of artworks about migration, a lot of artworks about technology, but it's not so easy all the time to combine these two things. And also, especially, I find it very original, the idea to see that sometimes in condition of life, we are really forced to experience reality also through certain kind of technologies that are in a sense also technology that are dominance and they are also embedding a certain way of culture that might not represent what the people that are using actually believe. So I think this is a very important point. And also speaking about the title of your keynote, that is "My Name is Subject to Immigration Control." I found it also very important that you wanted to bring your situated experience, and I hope you allow me to go a bit there, because I think it's also important to discuss this form of opposition, this form of oppressions through our own specific story of life. So you recently left Russia, and interesting also you prefer to use the word immigrant, you told me. I think also this is probably good if you want, especially to try to reappropriate words that have been now part of the right-wing extremist propaganda in a sense. So maybe, of course, there is a reason to use migrants and not immigrants, but I also think we should have the freedom to reappropriate words. And if we want to use immigrants, can also have an interesting political impact if you then give it another meaning. But so would you like to tell us a bit more about your self-experience as an immigrant from Russia, and also how do you experience this situation that is quite unexpected, because also is recent?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Well, actually, I think I should mention that, of course, I'm a super privileged immigrant, obviously. I'm a white-skinned woman with, a good education, with quite a big, professional curriculum, and even though all my activities are mainly based in, I mainly focused in Russia, or used to be focused in Russia, but still, of course, my situation is completely uncomparable to the immigrants with another situation. And yes, my home was not destroyed. I still have my parents and relatives which are left in Moscow, which makes a big difference between me and the majority of the immigrants who are experiencing completely another conditions and who are much, much more vulnerable and whose struggle are completely different to my ones. But what I believe is that still to every person who have to leave their country, not because of free will, but because of the dangers, of the potential dangers, because of the political reasons in my case, it's still, for everyone a big trauma, and it's still a big trauma and struggle. And this, what I probably didn't expect to be that quite intense, but at a certain point living in Russia I had no choice rather than to leave it, because it really became from the political point of view and from the point of view of the censorship, it became impossible for me to function there as a professional too. It's quite important to it was quite an important issue which led me to be an immigrant. And explaining again why I'm using the word immigrant, I really here want to emphasize that migration means, like, for example, some people migrate within Europe to seek for better life conditions, to find better jobs, and etc. and etc. And it's a free will. They're making it by free will because they're looking for better conditions of their life. Of course, I was looking for better conditions of my life, but my move was not because I really wanted it, but because I had to do it. And coming from a third country where the income is much lower than in general in Europe, of course, it means a lot of struggles. And of course, being Russian doesn't make it easier. But here, I don't, of course, compare my situation to the situation of Ukrainians. Actually, I forgot to mention that in some of the Telegram groups which I was showing during the presentation, it's quite interesting that those Telegram groups which we have from migrants, there people are all mixed, Ukrainians, Belarusian and Russians. They are solving the issues of migration altogether. This is very interesting, and they're helping each other, so that this situation of being an immigrant really, unites people when they really see it meaningful to unite, to struggle together.
Thank you. And another interesting discussion that we had together was about the power of art in exposing systems of injustice, and also trying to resist things from injustice, and being also a subject of repression yourself, because you had to flee your country and there is a war going on. Do you think that it's still possible to use art as a form of emancipation due also the repression that is happening right now? Do you believe that there is a power also to use these artistic means to make a change, and that sometimes can also be effective, or to bring evidence to certain misconduct?
Well, I would say that because of the war and the repression system which we witness in Russia, I quite big time lost the belief in the power of activist art because of course on the level of the community, on the small level, it's super important because it still brings, you know, this feeling of empowerment by a small amount of people in the community. But on a bigger level, of course, it just doesn't really lead to any changes, obviously. Still, nevertheless, I believe that activist art and art which is put in a spotlight into the injustice and all those you know, problems in the society, it's still very important that these kind of artworks are existing. But of course, my personal experience was quite traumatic in terms of that I a bit lost real belief in this kind of artistic activities, but still I give it a chance, let's say.
But something also to go a bit in depth, do you have in mind some artistic project also coming from Russia that is still existing that could be mentioned, or you know, that is also showing what is happening there? Or you think this is absolutely not possible to do inside and they're mostly artists that are outside that are doing things?
Currently, there are, of course, some artistic initiatives, but they are very good real ones, anonymous, and they are happening mainly on the streets. They are happening, which is also, I believe that this is a sign of the authoritarian country, that the art goes from, you know, a very intellectual and, you know, complicated projects with, you know, a lot of, you know, research, let's say, and etc. It becomes very plain, very straightforward, and very analog in truth. And this is the most powerful in truth, because in the beginning I was thinking, okay, let's use technology. I mean, what really helps is that when you go to the street and you see a small sign somewhere, you know, a small intervention, but which is something artistic opposing the current regime, this is already a big thing, you know, when you see it. So this kind of initiative, they are still existing. Of course, you know, there are less and less of them. But what is interesting, of course, a lot of people, they started to develop is open language. And of course, if to talk about cultural institutions, and currently I am doing a project actually investigating the topic of the so-called big compromise of the people, of the cultural agents who are still active in Russia, and how do they deal with the situation when they are completely silenced, when they are not allowed to talk about the big issue, you know, the war, the oppression, the repression. How do they manage to still, you know, be active in a professional field? And this is very interesting because, of course, you have to balance and to find an equilibrium between, you know, being the system which it wants from you to be shut up and to talk about this new values of, you know, the authoritarian country, and at the same time to squeeze some of the meaningful oppositional thoughts in between of what you are doing. This is a very interesting thing, and now I'm making research. I'm making a lot of, I'm making interviews with people who stayed in Russia. What are the strategies actually to deal with it? It's a bit tricky project because, of course, as soon as they open up their mouths and they speak openly, then I put them in danger, because then they will be fired or they could probably potentially face the danger of being imprisoned.
Yeah, and I imagine also for yourself, you have to be careful what you even say or not, because, you know. And but also another question for me would be, how is all this situation influence your artistic practice at the moment, and what are you working on now? Is still reflecting this condition, or because as artists it's very difficult to be not self-reflected?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think I partly mentioned it during the talk and now, but I felt the urge to do something artistically and etc. and etc. and etc. But then after a certain period of time, I realized that I'm dead as an artist. If I don't have a freedom to talk about what's happening, I don't feel that, and I was not, as an artist before the war started, I mean, the majority of my artworks, they were not very political or activist. Okay, some of them were, but most of them no. And then I realized that I personally, and it was my personal decision, because I believe that every person, every artist should decide on behalf of themselves what is good and what is bad in this situation. But for me, it became impossible to act as an artist in this situation and not to reflect into the current situation in a critical way. But then on the second year, I think after the war started, I decided to initiate some small artworks, and some of them I showed today during the talk, and but they are the artworks which are trying to reflect in this or another way the current situation in a critical way.
This also makes me reflect, perhaps is interesting for the audience, that our event in April that was called Beyond Control, we also invited Tanya Lokots that was speaking about the artistic practices of people living in the occupied territory in Ukraine. So there was also this perspective, and so I just mentioned, if the audience is interested, you could also watch this talk that we had last time. But also going back to your own situation, we had a lot of conversation about the work you did before leaving Russia, and being also somebody directing the Disruption Network Lab, I was immediately interested in the Museum of Cryptography, and I felt such a shame that the body of us can actually visit it, and also the fact that you told me was a long process to curate it, and then when it was basically ready, you had to go away. And so would you like to tell us a bit more what is inside this museum, that we could have all experienced, and that you created also with so much work?
Thank you for this question. Yeah, Cryptography Museum in Moscow is a science and technology museum which is devoted to the wide range of topics of data privacy, data protection, digital algorithms, and cryptography. Not only digital, but we go back to the history of the ancient Greece, and but mainly we are focused on the current times and digital times. And so this is the museum indeed I was working on for 2.5 years, and the idea was to create the first of its kind place where everyone could find edutainment installations and artworks which are speaking about the history of communication between people via the lens of data, privacy protection, and security. And inside the museum, there are a lot of multimedia and interactive installation. It's a heavy participatory, experience, which unfortunately you cannot experience now, even in theory. And the idea was to also create a place where people could, like a platform, a place where people could come and discuss, digital algorithmic agency, all kind of topics related to algorithmic capitalism and society which we live, Web3 issues and other ones. Quite a lot of installations, not a lot, but quite some of the installations are devoted to the topic of hacktivism and hacking, to the topic of protection of your information in your everyday life, and basically enlighten people with different also approaches to where to watch, what to see, and how to understand what is behind the apps and digital tools which we are using every day. And indeed, unfortunately, like for example, we have installations about how Tor works, or how to establish your VPN, on etc. and etc. Unfortunately, we worked for this museum. I'm a concept creator of the exposition and creative director of the installations. The museum had the worst timing ever, because we were working on it when it was COVID, so it was already super difficult. And then when it was opened, it was very end of December, and actually I was begging, let's not open, and because we are not ready, let's delay it 2 months. And in 2 months the war started. So you can imagine that basically the whole work, and we had a lot of plans for international collaborations. We had a lot of plans for bringing more artworks to the museum from the international artists, and we had plans with the international institutions, and basically everything was completely cut and shut. And I understand why, and of course fair enough, but personally, for me, it was like a big loss, but of course uncomparable to the tragedy which has started in February. We had to close it almost right away because of the war, and we faced the dilemma: how should we deal with the situation? You know, how should we act in this situation of the global tragedy, not global tragedy, but the tragedy which is going on? How should we reflect? And we decided that okay, we will keep open the doors, but all the activities were shut down completely. And then at a certain moment, we decided that I initiated a conference, because I thought that it's still important that we create. We have a lot of discussions. What is it? The soft. What is it? Let's say it's kind of a soft resistance, and creating, this alternative discourse to the discourse which is being imposed by the state. And we tried to create a conference on digital tools to empower people in this uneasy situation. And of course, it was called Screenshot, and we were talking about, future strategies and etc. But in between, we were also teaching things like how to make fact-checking, how to create VPN, and we were showing all kind of, movies about digital resistance and hacktivism and other stuff. And I think it was one of the most important public events which we made together in the museum since the war started. But I believe that probably it was in 2023, but I believe that probably for now, even this kind of activities is a bit problematic to make.
Thank you. And I see that now we should open to the audience. There is also some questions from the audience online, but I would say let's start first with the audience here. There is already a question over there.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. One of the phrases that struck me was the how the mobile and the digital becomes the center of the universe for people who are being, let's say, the ground taken from beneath their feet, are being most restricted from access to analog things at times. So with that in mind, I see that as a kind of super negative thing to read into that and what it means for resistance to that. And so I'm also thinking about maybe your thoughts on low-tech resistance to high-tech controls, also because those kinds of jobs that you get as a very restricted migrant or immigrant are usually these most exploitative kinds of things in the digital environments, where you don't have rights as a worker so much. You're just being, you have to work in this kind of freelance gig mode, which you described. So in terms of low-tech resistance, maybe some thoughts about if you've encountered things where people are really utilizing more analog spaces, social spaces, to be places for migrants to empower themselves through face-to-face interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for this comment and a question. Actually, that sorry. Actually, that's one of the very important observation that. And also coming back to the effective, fighting of alienation, let's say, in truth, digital tools and technologies, they are great, but at the same time, nothing is more empowering rather than, meeting in one place physically and, creating some safe spaces for migrants where they can help each other and to receive this sense of belonging and to talk about their problems and issues. Also, what I would like to mention about these, these different strategies of the resistance, in truth, in most of the situations, and even in a very light situation, which I experienced as an immigrant, when you're an immigrant, you have already given all your information, all your data to the states, so basically there is nothing to lose. If you keep on using these tools, you already, your data is already not yours. So it's too late, basically, to use something, which will protect your data from, being breached or, being used in some harmful way, and etc. And first of all, and secondly, in most of the cases, what comes first to the place is surviving. And when you are surviving, to be able to resist, it's already a privilege because you have time for resisting, because first, every immigrant is very occupied with very basic things, how to survive, and you don't think about, resistance, political resistance, activism, and etc., because it's a privilege when you already settled up, or you already, I don't know, bought, your cup and frying pan, and you know how you pay your rent for the next month, which is very important, or you have a place to stay, then you can think about other types of resistance. Yeah.
There's another question.
Thank you very much for your keynote as an immigrant. So I'm adopting your label. I identified with a lot of the themes that you raise. I think I'm particularly struck by your pessimism as an artist. One, because I really identify with that, but two, as I was watching your different art pieces, whether they were artistic or with tech, there's a lot of hope for me and a lot of courage and boldness. And so I'm wondering about the pessimism, because has the distance you have in Germany, the new status, increased or decreased your pessimism? Are you shifting? Does it shift? Or are you totally opposed to the idea of having some hope in the ability of art to raise resistance? Thank you.
Thank you for this. Thank you very much for this question and for your comment. I appreciate it. Basically, currently I'm based in Lisbon, not in Portugal, not in Germany. But this is a very good question, actually. I think my pessimism comes from the personal experience of my friends dying. And when you are of my very, very close people who know that they will never see their parents anymore because of the political situation in Russia and in between Russia and Ukraine. And when you face the reality in such a harsh and tragic way, and then you look into the artistic medium, it's just incomparable, unfortunately. Which still, when you put yourself together, you still have this creative part of you, which still gives you the power, these strengths of nevertheless create artworks and to reflect in a poetic way or in a certain way, but without a hope that it will change anything. So coming back to your question whether something has changed, I think yes, in truth, distancing yourself from the country where you feel this pressure on the everyday life basis, when you really witnessing it, witnessing even though from afar, but still you witnessing the war, like a very, like a thing happening around you, with a lot of consequences on every thing which you are making. Of course, getting out from this situation, of course, changed a bit. It was very healing. In truth, it was healing, and in truth, only after I left the country, I started to think again more about coming back to their artistic creation in a less pessimistic way.
Maybe to add a bit of positivity, from, of course, my privileged perspective as a migrant, Italian migrant in Germany, also working with art, that I think that through your keynotes, still we could see the positive power of art in these situations, because you were producing literacy, you were giving information about fact, and I still believe that producing literacy and also producing evidence of facts might create a change. For sure, at least a change of mindset. It's very difficult to change political opponents when they are so powerful, but I believe that we really have to fight also to change mindsets and steer it towards a direction that we believe is just. And I still believe that art has this power. At least we try. In you too.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, yes. I would like to agree with your point, Tatiana.
There was another question over there, I think. I don't see questions. I have a lot of light on me, but there is a question online, so in between, I would say let's go with the people following online.
Hello, thank you very much for your keynote. This question is from the online crew. The question is, just a few years ago, smartphones were considered luxury goods. Now they are no longer a status symbol, but a basic tool for social integration, as you were telling us. However, they can be very expensive and not easy to obtain for migrant people. Is there a project to give smartphones to people in need, or is there any artwork you know of that reflects on this issue?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Of course, yes, it's a very relevant question that indeed not all people, and especially those who are finding themselves in a difficult situation, they can afford smartphones. Although I cannot say that I'm aware. I mean, of course, I think there are initiatives which are helping people to get the smartphones, and actually, I think nowadays you can find smartphones with some basic functionality which are not that extremely expensive, and I'm sure that there are quite a lot of initiatives which are helping migrants to get this digital mean of living, let's say. As for the artworks, What was the question again? Whether there are artworks which are dealing with the alternative to mobile? Which are reflecting the difficulties of accessing to the technology.
And also the difficulty of having this kind of technology.
Yeah, well, actually, I think this question is also connected to the access to the internet, not only the smartphone, and of course there are quite some initiatives to create the alternative networks, let's say, which are functioning in parallel to the lack of internet connection, let's say. As for the concrete names and artworks, I think I cannot really recall a very concrete one now. Do you, Tatiana?
I mean, I think that there are a lot of initiatives that are also speaking about the risk of using this kind of technology in terms of technology of domination, also in the way you are speaking. But I mean, now I'm not. You were saying mobile technology that are denouncing the fact that is. Can you explain better? Sorry.
As I understood from the online crew, the question was exactly related to the object. That on one side, it's a status symbol. On the other side, it's a basic tool. So there is a clash between these two concepts. And how is this thematized, if it is, in the artwork related to migrant issues?
Well, I'm sure that in that or another way it's being touched by some of the artists, but I think that most of the time still I think that we don't speak about smartphone as a status thing, because nowadays indeed as I also mentioned during my keynote, the research tells us that indeed most of the migrants, this is the first thing they want to have, instead of even health insurance, or I don't know, instead of even food sometimes, because it's really so crucial for their lives.
Actually, now that I'm reflecting, I have an example, and we will have this person coming in November. I would like to point out on the work of Joanna Moll. Yes, because she also works a lot on the interface of technology and also mobile phones, and at the moment she's doing a project related to the physical bodily reaction of the interaction with mobile phones and tracking through the cookies. And so she will actually do a performance here in November as part of her fellowship with us and the Disruption Network Institute, that is related to the discourse of tracking and oppressing your body through using a mobile when you are conscious, also even non-conscious, that the mobile is configured in a way, and because of the interface of certain apps technology, to trap you inside this interface. So for example, I think also Tactical Tech did the project in which was pretty clear what is the interface of certain apps that are, in a sense, really making you so concentrated on the physicality of the phone that you don't experiencing the rest of the environment yourself, and how these apps are actually configured. But Joanna specifically goes in depth to really make studies on what happens to your body. And with students, she's doing at the moment workshops that also measure what happens through your body through this interaction made by tracking and cookies technology. And we will have a performance about this in November when she comes.
Yeah, very good example.
Yeah. And then we have other questions from the audience, I hope. Yes, one over there. Also, I hope was like not giving space to another. Yes.
Yeah, hello. My question is the topic of wordings of what is the definition of migrant. In your research, do you have a preferred or another wording that you would like to use if you would have a choice to use a new wording for migrant? Do you have a preferred or maybe a new wording?
Whether I have invented a new word for the umbrella term which doesn't exist in law? It's a very good question, actually. I should think about it more, I think, because for the moment, you know, people who, well, basically, you know, I will not be very original because, you know, here you can choose two ways, either to become very artistic and creative and to say that this word will be for example, or you go, you know, more, legal way and keeping in mind what it really means in the society. So, person from another country who became the person of this country, I don't know. Difficult to say because, of course, and that was actually also in my observation, because the word migrant is short and it's useful to use because, you know, it's like easy to pronounce and you don't explain a lot of stuff, but also it means that actually quite a lot of people mean something different by using this word. So basically it's a good starting point to think about the alternative. I think you are very right, actually, because we need to get rid of the existing labels which we have in this. In truth, it's very important, and this is what I also tried to put a spotlight on, that indeed within the history which we have of immigration and migration, all these words became already biased for us as a society. But actually this is a very interesting question, because it's relevant not only for migration but a lot of other areas of discrimination, because the history which we have during the, you know, during all the historical events which we had, a lot of the language which we are using indeed already has such a burden of the meanings, so that it's good just to reinvent the language. Let's all think about it. What will be the word? I think it's...
Yes, I'm sorry, I want to make a comment to that, because when you were talking about that, it came an interview into my mind from Bruce Lee. He was in that times also requested about labeling of migrants, and it was a very bad labeling conflict in that time. And when he was asked how you would prefer to label your group or other groups, and he said, people. He said only, label it people. Yeah.
Yes, this is a good
How
point. But then the question is whether, and it's a very good point in terms of that we shouldn't make a difference between that or another group of people. But I can imagine that first we need to change the legal system of the countries to make it relevant position.
No, and I also believe in an ideal world, yes, but since these definitions are now really appropriated by the rights and twist into their political agenda that goes then to oppress people, I think that's, in my perspective, I believe we should use this word even more to give them another meaning, to appropriate them back, because otherwise we leave this definition only to the people that want to oppress us. And I think to be called all people is the next step, that I also agree with you, but first there is a moment in which we should fight back, I think. And do we have another question, or? Yes.
Yes, sorry. I have a frog in my throat, as we say in German. Yes, thank you for this presentation. What struck me also very much was, for example, this example you showed of the guy looking for work via Tinder. And my question is, so in this digital realm, and of course it's, as you said, like this mobile phone thing is crucial for everybody who's on migration. This is also what my friends all told me. Is there something like what we could perhaps call something like a digital commons? So, or is all of that what happens in the digital world still subject to exploitation and so on? But I mean, with this sharing knowledge, also transferring money, sharing knowledge about migration routes, and so is this something like which perhaps we could call an old world, something like a commons? You know what I mean? Commons, the old Marxist term of Allmende, we say in German.
Well, if you could define what exactly in this case you would mean, it would be easier for me to answer.
Well,
what is the question exactly?
If there is something which we could perhaps call commons, with it, which we could use this old word for, commons, like something which belongs more or less to everybody who uses it. To spread information, knowledge, or is all this what is happening in the digital world still subject to exploitation? Which it, of course, is, but it's just a question about like chances, like, and is there something like a power? And about power structures, because I mean the normal. Just interrupt me if you can connect. Otherwise, I will just continue.
I think I understood what he means. Like, since we are speaking about technology more as a mean of oppression, in a sense connected also with the pods, what he was saying, can we, turn it around to imagine instead technology that becomes commons in this kind of field, speaking about migration? I hope I understood well.
Yes,
okay,
you
good.
put it perfectly.
Yeah, but I think that the examples which I showed are quite clearly show that the technologies are not only being the instruments of oppression, but also they are the instruments of empowerment. And what is more interesting, what is quite interesting, is that using the technologies which are created by the digital capitalism, people are finding the way of workarounds and hacks and all kind of trick the algorithms which were not meant by this technology when this technology was produced by the tech company. So I think this is quite important.
Thank you, Anna. And I think now our time is over. And first of all, I would like to give you a really deep thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then I want to say to everyone to come back in 20 minutes because we will speak about decolonizing AI. And this also connects really well, actually, with the last question, also from one side to reflect on how this technology can create domination and even war, and from the other also how can we fight back. Thank you.
Thank you once again.